Judy Art Studio. Welcome. Today I am going to do a little tutorial on how to do a seascape, which is one of my favorite things to paint. I live on the coast of Maine, and about 45 minutes from my house is this beautiful little beach called Wadsworth Cove. It's in the town of Castine. And it's a tiny little beach. I say tiny, but it's a fairly good-sized beach, actually. And every time I go there, I find something new. When you get there, you see out into Penobscot Bay. You can't quite see the open ocean. You see across to Searsport, Maine. That's probably a couple miles across. But the cool thing about this beach is that every time I go, I find sea glass. And I mentioned that to a friend, and she had no clue what sea glass was. So as we go, I will explain that today if you don't know. So I have a bunch of blues. I'll have all Ranger inks. I'm going to use, I'm not sure exactly which ones I'm going to use, but it's going to be Indigo, Aquamarine, Glacier Pool, and Monsoon and Turquoise for my blues. So I'm going to start by putting a little bit of ink on my palette. And I'm going to mix a couple of blues together. I'm going to start with the indigo, but it's such a bright color and it stains. And so I'm going to water it down a little bit with a little bit of turquoise to make it a little bluer, and a little bit of monsoon. The indigo is almost a purple by itself. So I've got three really pretty blues in there. And I'm going to start up here. In the sky, you always want the top of your sky to be dark. And then as you go to the horizon, it's going to get lighter and lighter. So look at a picture of the ocean at some point and notice that. So I'm not going to put a lot on here. I'm just going to paint it on because I just want it in a few places. All right, here we go. I'm just going to paint that right on there. And let's start with that. Then I'm going to put in a little bit of a lighter color. I'm going to adjust the pool. I'm going to put this right on the paper. And then I'm going to go even lighter. And I've got one called Cloudy Day, if I can find it. This is it, Cloudy Blue. And that's going to be the next one that I'm going to put on right here. Now I'm going to put a little alcohol on that and just try to even that out and use a little bit of gravity to mix those. So from here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work a little bit on the water down here since I have some blues out. And this is going to be a beach. And we're going to have a couple of rocky points coming over, and I'm going to have a little bit of a point that comes out here that's grassy. When I'm sitting at this beach, it's cool because there is a grassy point here, and there's a little farmhouse that sits on the beach. I'm not going to put the farmhouse on today. I'm going to leave it a little bit more rustic. All right, so I'm going to take this again. And this time I am going to put just a little bit of the pool. I want it lighter and the cloudy blue together. And then I'm going to add some alcohol to it to water it down and dilute it. Because I'm going to start at my horizon. The cool thing about alcohol inks is just let the inks play. Let them do what they want. I'm going to put a little bit of the darker blue now with the lighter blue. I'm going to pick it up because as you get closer to the foreground, it gets lighter. It gets darker and darker. I'm going to try to work those in so it blends. So, this is going to be a green hill, but I don't want any white showing behind it, just in case the inks have a mind of their own and they want to fill in certain places and not the others. There. Okay, so that's my sky. I've left this white because this is going to be beach, and I don't want the blue to sort of contaminate the brown that I'm going to have here. If it does, it's no big deal. But So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of this willow and then a little bit of the mojito. And we're just going to draw in up here a little green grassy point that's sort of coming out into the ocean. And at this particular point, as you're looking out, like I'm standing on the beach, I'm kind of looking out, there's over here in the background a tiny little point that comes out on this side too. So I'm just going to touch that in there. I'm not going to make a big deal of this one at all. I want to make sure that they're kind of the same shade as their background, and then I'm going to leave this one lighter so it looks like it's further away. I'm going to add in some details over here on this one. I'm going to use a little bit of the Everglades, and I'm going to add some darker green in. And I'm actually going to put it right in the palette where I had the willow. I'm going to kind of mix the two of them together. And I am going to add a little bit of alcohol to dilute it down a little. I don't want a lot on my brush. I might even dab a little off there. I'm just going to add some texture in here. I'm then going to add a little bit of the pebble. I'm going to add a little bit of like a light brown in there. All right, that's looking pretty good. See those little lines? They're actually good because when you see a hill, you have dark and light spots in it. Where the hill naturally rises or the wind's blowing through the grass. It just adds a little bit of texture. And then I'm going to put a little bit of espresso in, and I'm just going to touch on what would be in the shadows. I want a very tiny little bit of this. I'm going to draw a thin little line, so I'm going to put a little on my brush and then wipe off most of it. And then just go down here and darken this area here. I think the next thing I'm going to do now is put a little bit of the beach in here. The beach is going to kind of come like this. So this is like I'm standing at the beach, I'm kind of looking this way. All right. So as I'm looking at the scene, there are some rocks. There are rocks coming out over here, kind of from the beach to the point, and there are rocks coming over here. So I'm going to start with a little bit of pitch black. And I'm just going to draw in what I think are going to be sort of the edges for the rocks. Now this looks pretty flat, and in order to make it 3D, what we're going to want to do is we're going to add lights and darks. So I'm going to go back over here to the brown, and I'm going to put a little black in it, and I'm just going to hit it up a little bit and make it like a light gray. So I'm going to start texturing. I'm going to just put a little bit of color in. Doesn't look like much now, but it really is a lighter color. It's going to help just to add some texture, some depth to this. And you don't want to put it everywhere, you just want to hit. And then go back, and when the lines start to, they call it blooming, and so the lines make little ridges, you can just sort of play with those to make them a little more complex. You can already see, I think, those lines like giving it some depth. So it looks like it's like craggly rocks. It's not just flat black. Think about where the light is hitting this. Is your sun over here? Or is your sun over here? It's totally up to you. I'm thinking the sun's coming from here just because when I visit this beach, that's usually about the time of day. The sun's usually right about here. All right, so there we go. So far, this is what we've got. Now, we want to continue to go through and add a little more depth. I'm just going to straighten that out there. Straighten out some of these edges a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little bit of Snowcap, which is a white, on my palette. And by doing this, what it will do is we're going to be able to put some just real blended colors in there. And that actually came out a little gray. I'm going to shake it again and see if I can get it so it's not quite as gray. All right. Put some pure white in there. There we go. Apparently I put a black cap on that one by accident. But that's okay because I'm going to use a little bit of this gray right here to go through and just do a little bit of highlighting. Do you see how the gray blends right with the black? It kind of sinks right in. I'm just going for the tops of those little dark lines. All right, so I've got some really pretty grays in there now. I'm going to go back through and I'm going to hit with a little bit of white to make it even lighter in some places. Not a lot. Just the tops of the rocks. All right. So, as you can see, I've got a little bit of texturing going on there. All right, now I'm going to add a little bit of white along where the foam would be if you had waves. So I'm going to start over here and just a little bit right along here. And again, white, alcoholic white sort of blends in. It doesn't really repel like the other alcoholics do. It just kind of, it's more plasticky, it kind of lays on top, it's more opaque. All right, so along the beach, I often find right here just some seaweed. So I'm just going to texture it up a little just to play to see where I want it. Put a little seaweed down here at the bottom. So I'm going to use a little bit of my greens and yellows and a little bit of black. Seaweed's actually mostly black, believe it or not. At least the seaweed in Maine is. I guess my husband just won some lobsters and I'm so excited. I'm from Maine and I've eaten them all my life, but I still can't get enough of them. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a little bit of the foam up onto the beach. I'm going to put the white on fairly heavy for this. I'm just going to bring it like this. Just sort of push it this way. And I'm going to add a little yellow and green to this. The This may become a shrub the more I'm thinking about it. This is seaweed here. I may make this a shrub with some sea roses. I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. It's my painting. I think I'm going to change it up a little. I think a pop of pink or red would be really pretty there. All right, so I'm going to make this a little shrub that's growing over here in this pretty little area. I haven't been to this particular beach in the spring, and that's when sea roses grow. I don't know what they're called. They're wild roses that grow along the seashores. I always call them sea roses. I'm sure there's another name for them. So there's a little bit of a brush, a little bit of shrub growing right there. There's a little mojito in this shrub. Pop bright color. Oh, that's pretty. And then I'm gonna get a bright yellow, sunshine yellow. And then I am gonna get my favorite color, if I can find it. Fiesta. Now, little trick. Remember I told you how alcohol inks repel, but the white is a little bit more opaque? If I want this to pop on that, and I put it down right now, it's just going to sort of melt into that green. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put little dabs of white down first, where I want the little roses to go. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of air, make sure it's dry. And then we'll put little dabs of white. And those will not stay white, but it's going to put a little bit of opacity there for those roses to come through. And I think I'm going to do both white and yellow on it because it's my painting and I want a little bit of color in this shrub. So this is a shrub that's got white and yellow roses growing on it. And I absolutely adore this color. It's like a hot festive pink. All right, so now in our distance, I'm going to add a couple of things. Oh, first of all, I want this to be more like a beach with pebbles on it. So this is a really cool technique. The bristles, as you can see, are not flat. They're almost like a clump. So I'm going to take, remember I said I take a little bit of that opaque white? Take that and put a little bit of the brown in it. And we're just going to dab on the beach and put some stones in it, because this is a rocky beach. This is not a sandy beach. Small pebbles. But I'm just going to dab in some just rocks. Now, if you had in mind a sandy beach, you could have kept it the way we had it. As I said, I wanted this more like my rocky, pebbly beach that I go and I visit. I'm going to go back through on the white, and I'm going to just touch up where the surface come up there. I'm going to go right over that pebbly. I probably should have done the pebbly area first, but I didn't think about it. And that's okay. You can, when you're working with alcohol inks, you can always go back. They are so unforgiving and forgiving at the same time. Anyone who's ever worked with them, you know that. The beauty in alcohol inks is the fact that they don't do what you want to do, but then they do really cool things that you're not expecting them to do. Okay, so there we go. There is my pebbly beach. And the sand going right up on the pebbles. I'm sorry, the foam going right up on the sand pebbles. All right. All right, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some clouds in the sky, but not too many of them. I just want to touch that up again just for effect. I'm going to go right over the dark lines. Do you see how I've got these dark ridges? When you put white over where the inks have sort of naturally laid those dark lines, you get really cool effects because those dark lines give you some depth. So I'm just going to do a flat little cloud right there. Yeah. Okay, so I think to top this off, I want to add a little point of interest in the sky. I am going to put some birds that are flying around. And I do the little seagulls that I learned when I was like 3 years old. Well, probably not that young, maybe 5 years old. The little V seagulls, but they, for a little seascape like this, they really are perfect. You just have to watch out the perspective and the size on them. I always use a really, really fine brush to do them. And I use, actually I'm going to use something that's just even smaller. And I put a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of the alcohol ink on it. And I just sort of, I try to get the, where it's dried out. See how on the edges it's starting to dry? I try to get the drier ink. And I just turn the brush, and then I always do a little bit of rubbing off till it feels just like I've got a tiny little smudge in there. So the ones that are like down here towards the horizon, you want them so, so small. And light if you can. A really light touch. And then you want them sort of soaring in all kinds of different ways. There we go. All right, so there you have it. There is